Welcome to this meeting of the Executive. My name is Councillor Peter Clark, and I am the Deputy Leader of the Council and Deputy Chair of this Executive. I will be chairing this evening's meeting in the absence of Councillor Follows, who is on holiday. Fiona, do we have any apologies?
Just the one that you've announced. Councillor Follows is on leave.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the meeting on the 4th of July 2023, which are published on the website. Please indicate your agreement to these minutes. Thank you. Item 3, declarations. Fiona, do we have any declarations?
I believe Councillor Rivers wishes to make a declaration.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. So, yes, I wish to declare a non-pecuniary interest in item 10, which is Housing Delivery Local Authority Housing Fund. As this item takes us into the area of purchasing properties for rent, ring-fenced for allocations to Ukrainian or Afghan refugees on the resettlement and relocation schemes, I declare that I, with Councillor Penny Rivers, host a Ukraine family since before this government scheme was announced. So I declare this non-pecuniary interest to avoid any perception that the family we are hosting might receive preferential treatment because they are being hosted by 2 members of this council, one of whom myself is portfolio holder for housing, operations and services, and who may be in a position to review and comment on processes associated with exercising related allocations. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
And thank you, Councillor Rivers. Item 4, questions from the public.
Deputy Leader, can I just also declare an interest in item number 9 for the new build housing delivery in Newhurst? I just want it to be lodged that I am the Surrey County Councillor for the Ewhurst and Cranley division, but obviously I have no pecuniary interest in this item. Thank you.
And thank you. Are there any others? Thank you. Let's move on. Item 4, questions from the public. Fiona, do we have any?
No questions from the public.
Thank you. Questions from members. Do we have any questions, Fiona?
There's one question submitted from Councillor Higgins, who is here. If you'd like to read your question, Councillor Higgins.
Thank you. Downhurst Road in Newhurst is made up of a number of young families that enjoy using play areas. A number of residents have expressed support for replacing the houses, which is to be discussed at item 9 on the agenda with further social housing, but they have been concerned that the play area within that site will be lost in the process. Could the Executive provide reassurance that they remain committed to retaining and refurbishing play areas, including the one in Downhurst Road?
Councillor Palmer.
Thanks to Councillor Higgins for the question. The Council is in the process of developing the plans for the site at Downhurst Road, which includes 6 existing properties and the current grassed play area to the rear of their gardens. The pre-application advice has been obtained on the current plans, which include the relocation and reprovision of a new play area as part of the new development proposals. When the design for the new build scheme has been developed further and ahead of the submission of a planning application, the development team will arrange an informal consultation drop-in event in the village. At this event, residents will have the opportunity to see the proposals for the new homes, the play area, and share their comments on them with officers and some members of the design team. The development team will keep Councillor Higgins informed of the proposals as they develop.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. We now move to item 6 on the agenda, which is Deputy Leader and Portfolio Holders updates. I will kick off on this one. I've got a couple of things to say. One is Just one or two words about the appeal decision made by the government-appointed planning inspector regarding Waverley Lane and Farnham. Normally, there's no appeal against planning inspectors' decisions. But as a council, we are taking this very seriously, and our planning portfolio holder, Councillor Townsend, will say a few words about this in her update. Moving on to my portfolio, one of my portfolios, which is IT. I'm pleased to say that 60% of councillors are now using the new equipment, the new Samsung tablet. So we are making good progress on our journey to becoming a paperless council. I would stress, though, that no members will be obliged to do so, as I recognise there are some members who have valid reasons for staying with paper. Moving on to the list of portfolio holders updates, I'd like to start with Councillor Keogh.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. I just wanted to give a quick update around the governance side of my portfolio. So work is beginning to look at the decision-making processes of the executive as regards to the scheme of delegation. So the current scheme of delegation is very centralised, and there are concerns this could lead to ad hoc meetings needing to be put in, which of course isn't a good use of officer or councillor time. We will be engaging with and notifying in advance the Overview and Scrutiny and Standards chairs, and we'll be voluntarily briefing them. And we hope that this work will be completed by the end of this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Merriweather.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I'm going to be speaking on item 11 slightly later on, but with your forgiveness, I am the ward member for Moore Park. And the Waverley Lane appeal decision has caused an immense amount of confusion and distress to the residents of my ward. And I'd just like to place on record my thanks to you, to Councillor Townsend, to all the members of the executives and the officers who are working very, very hard to try and do what we can to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Merriweather. I move now to Councillor Merrilees.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. The Edge is still undergoing talks between ourselves and school and Surrey County Council. However, our outdoor pitches continue to be used by the community, and we have approached Surrey to offer the same arrangements for ATP1. We have still yet to receive the, well, they call it dilapidations, I'd call it wear and tear report that has been widely communicated by Surrey. The community groups are getting anxious, we're aware of that, as there have been no updates for use of the Edge from September. And the disability group has approached Waverley and are going to send through their requirements for the sessions run at the Edge. Waverley will explore options of rehoming them temporarily, and we are also prepared to help other groups and would ask them to contact Waverley Borough Council. All of the gym upgrades at Farnham Leisure Centre, Godalming and Hazelmere will take place within this financial year, and this will include complete replacement of all gym machines, equipment and decor. The new leisure contract has started well, and we're now working closely with everyone active on a refurbishment plan for Farnham Leisure Centre, which will be the first one of the new contract. And the Museum of Farnham, first project meeting takes place this Thursday, which will be exciting. And following that, there will be a clear timeline for delivery of the scheme. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Merrilees. Councillor Palmer, do you have an update for us?
Thank you. I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that the SIL bidding round is open, and councillors are encouraged to talk to local voluntary groups to consider putting forward bids, so we have the widest possible use for the quite substantial sums available.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. We now move to Councillor Rivers, if he has an update for us.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. At this stage, I have nothing further to say. I'll let other people enjoy that spare time.
Well, indeed, thank you for your brevity. We now move to Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. and good to see you in that chair this evening. I would just like to say that I very much support the portfolio holder for leisure, and I too am disappointed at the lack of response on behalf of Surrey County Council with regards to the Edge, despite previous very positive discussions on this point and a formal expression of interest by Walmer Hill School about taking on the Edge itself. And I would also very much welcome sight of the dilapidation schedule, which seems to be referred to openly by Surrey County Council and our Member of Parliament, Jeremy Hunt, and yet has not been sent to this council for us to look over. So anyway, moving on to my portfolio, you mentioned Waverley Lane, and I'm very much aware of the public interest in this matter, and we will continue to work alongside Farnham Town Council to seek grounds to challenge the inspector's decision on Waverley Lane. And I just would like to thank my officers for all the work they've done so far on this. Obviously, it would not be appropriate at this point to discuss the merits of any challenge at this point, and I look forward to updating the executive and the council later on. With regard to planning, the planning policy team are preparing papers to submit for the local plan part 2 challenge. As members will be aware, a High Court judge has decided that a legal challenge to the adoption of Waverley Borough local plan part 2 should be heard at a court hearing. At this stage, the claimants have only had to convince the judge that there was an arguable case, and the hearing will take place over a couple of days. We haven't got a date yet, but it will probably be in autumn at some stage. The grounds for the challenge relate to the way that the planning inspector, who examined local plan part 2, considered its relationship with local plan part 1 and to his conclusions regarding the developability of a site in Milford. The Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities has appointed the inspector and is a defendant in the case alongside the council. The adoption of local plan part 2 was obviously a really positive step for our communities and a considerable achievement for this council. The planning arguments were fully scrutinised at the public examination, and although, as this council knows, it is not unusual for a plan to be challenged, it is nonetheless very frustrating and will undoubtedly divert resources away from other important planning matters. We will obviously be robustly defending the adoption of local plan part 2 and will continue to give the adopted local plan part 2 full weight in planning decisions until such time as the High Court judge, the High Court rather, decides otherwise. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. There's clearly not much going on in planning at the moment. I've just noticed that, according to my list, we don't have a Councillor Fairclough, but I can see him sitting there. So I will ask if he has an update for us.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Yes, I do. I have an update on the issue of, the issue of maximum fines for public sector protection orders. Under the Prime Minister's Antisocial Behaviour Action Plan, the government intends to consult on increasing the upper fixed penalty limits for up to £500 for the following offences: littering, graffiti, fly posting, fly tipping, and breaching the household waste duty of care. However, there is no mention of dog control and there is no indication of the timetable for such a consultation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fairclough. Last but not least, as always, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Leader, and again, good to see you in the chair this evening. I too have, like Councillor Townsend, just want to report very briefly on a legal matter, but just to kind of place it in context, I think is important. What is happening at the moment as we speak in Southern Europe has underlined, I think, for all of us, the severity of the climate crisis. And it is in that context deeply disappointing that we see a government today, as we speak, rolling back the climate agenda. Of course, it was deeply, deeply disappointing that the High Court recently ruled in favour of the Secretary of State and against the objections of Waverley Borough Council to the proposal of UCOG, UK Oil and Gas, to drill for fossil fuels in Dunsfold. We were, of course, deeply disappointed by that decision. And at this point, what I can report is that we are seriously considering, in the light of the judgment, the legal options that are open to us. And in doing so, we are working closely with Protect Dunsfold, who were co-defendants in the case that we mounted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. And thank you for the kind comments of me sitting in this rather large chair, which I think was actually built for somebody slightly larger. We now move on to item 7 in the agenda, which is recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committees. I can announce that there aren't any. There are no recommendations to the Executive from the meetings on the Overview and Scrutiny Committee resources on the 10th of July. So we can now move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the new build housing delivery Chiddingfold, which Councillor Palmer is going to introduce.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. The proposal to demolish existing homes and deliver 26 new homes has already been approved by Council on December 13th last year. We are pleased that work is proceeding in full consultation with the tenants affected, and the scheme remains financially viable. So this item is a request to approve to move to the next stage of the project. I don't believe that this proposal is contentious, but I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Do any members of the Executive wish to speak on this item? Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. I'd just like to speak in full support of this application. It's really important that we can build houses for social rent that will be obviously far more affordable for residents that are on our housing list at the moment. And I very much applaud the work that is being done by our housing team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. In that case, we will move to the recommendations. I'm not going to read them all out. They are in your agenda papers. We'll take it in 2 sections though. The approvals of items 1 to 7. Can I have a show of hands for approval? Thank you. And then a recommendation, which is the Executive recommends to Council that an allocation of an additional £402,332 budget from reserves is approved. Is that approved? Thank you. We can now move to item 9 on the agenda. And as Councillor Palmer did such a splendid job in the last item, we will ask him to introduce it once more.
Well, that's very addictive, thank you. I know Councillor Higgins may speak on this, but so action here has been needed as the houses involved are not currently habitable. Proposal is to acquire 1 former council flat and proceed with demolition, with a view to bringing forward a business case for delivery of 12 affordable homes in keeping with our strategic focus on affordability. All the homes are vacant, and if we fail to proceed, there is a risk of collapse. The points raised by Councillor Higgins earlier separately are relevant, but you may wish to comment further.
Do you wish to comment further, Councillor Higgins?
Yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak on this matter. Before I begin, I'd just like to thank Officer Louisa Blundell, not only for preparing a report, but also keeping me up to date with the progress of this site. Obviously, unsurprisingly, this is a matter that I and the residents of Ewhurst have a particular interest in. The site is made up of Waverley-owned houses that were subsequently condemned and deemed dangerous structures. Tenants were subsequently rehoused, and since then this site has been cordoned off and lays dormant within the village. On the doorsteps during the local election, residents raised their concerns with me. They were anxious due to the uncertainty in respect to this site. And as I mentioned earlier in my question, Downhurst Road is made up of a number of young families that enjoy using the play area there. And I'm grateful to Councillor Palmer for giving reassurances on that. The report gives two options. First option is to do nothing and then look at a business case for demolition and delivery of affordable housing. Then the second option is, as indicated, the preferred option, and the recommendation is to buy back a former council-owned masonette and then demolish homes for safety reasons, but also in readiness for developing this site. This is a fantastic opportunity to redevelop this site and obtain a net gain in respect of affordable and social housing, which is really needed, not just in Newhurst, but across Waverley. So I'd be grateful if executive could approve a recommendation and give certainty to residents of Newhurst and to show real intent in terms of this council's ambition to provide affordable and social housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Higgins. It's nice to see such commitment and indeed some wise words there. So we will move now to the recommendation, and again, there are 7. So I'm not going to read them all out. They are in your agenda papers. So can we show our approval for recommendations 1 to 7? Thank you. Now, item 10 on the agenda is Housing Delivery Local Authority Housing Fund, which is going to be introduced by Councillor Rivers.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Yes, I will give a brief summary of this item, and if there are any difficult questions, I'm sure I have support in this room to help us through it. Okay, so in general, the Local Authority Housing Fund is a capital fund provided by the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, DLUC, could be no luck, I suppose, but to support local authorities in obtaining additional housing for families with housing needs who have arrived in the UK via Ukrainian and Afghan resettlement and relocation schemes. Now, this funding, naturally, will reduce the impact of such arrivals on Waverley's existing housing assets if we apply them in accordance with the report that is before you. It should be noted, however, that there are equality, diversity and inclusion implications in this report, as properties under the LAHF scheme, the Local Authority Housing Fund scheme, in the first instance may only be let to householders of specific nationalities. So homes under this scheme will be let for a fixed term to Afghan and Ukrainian households, but at the end of the fixed period, these homes may be brought into general needs stock and let to qualifying households on Waverley's housing register. Now, talking a little bit about financial modelling, I will say that this is detailed in the exempt Annex 1, and that is as far as I'm going to go, other than to say it shows that there is a positive net revenue impact over the life of these assets, which is some 60 years, for both the homes acquired on the open market and the new builds. So, in conclusion, I am pleased to recommend what I think, I'm sure what we all think, is an excellent report to the exec for approval of the acquisition and allocation of 11 homes to be let in the first instance to Ukrainian and Afghan households that are threatened with homelessness, noting that Waverley has a statutory duty to assist under its homelessness duties. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Rivers. Do any members of the executive?
How you toured briefly with the Beatles during their 1966 tour, and then you didn't see them.
My goodness, my fault. Let's close the lid at that one. There we go. Thank you, Councillor Rivers, and whoever was speaking through my tablet. I'll ask the question again. Do any members wish to speak apart from my tablet? If not, we'll move to the recommendations. And again, there are too many to read out. There are 6 recommendations for approval. Can I have a show of hands for that? Thank you. We now move to the final item on this evening's agenda, item 11, which is 69 High Street, Godalming. And I will ask Councillor Merriweather to introduce.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. As we all know, much of the reporting relating to this matter has had to be restricted to exempt papers for good reason, including commercial confidentiality. But before we revert to exempt session, as I expect we will, there are a few points of principle that I can make, which I'd like to, highlighting elements of the public part of the report. When we acquired this site nearly 18 months ago, our objective was, and still is, to provide much needed, genuinely affordable housing and to reinvigorate the one empty high street unit that we can. Even though we're a branch of local government, we're not immune to the macroeconomic climate, which has made this project so much more difficult. I'm very pleased that we still have options to deliver the intended outcome that are financially viable and demonstrate value for money. Yes, that macroeconomic climate means that these and other options have weakened from where they were last year, and some have had to be all but ruled out. But the recommended option is still expected to achieve the original outcome and pay for itself. Indeed, beyond the base case recommended option 3 presented in the exempt annexes, we also have funding reserve capacity to improve on that base case should we choose to do so, including the flexibility to progress the residential element through either the general fund or the housing revenue account. And that's a decision that we don't have to take now. While we do have to assess the project's value for money, we're not, and we're not even allowed to undertake the project primarily to make a profit, a yield, either in income or capital terms. In contrast, though, and because of the exact same macroeconomic factors, it would not be in our interests to exit the property prematurely into the open market now. I'm grateful to our officers and our team of independent professional expert advisors who've worked so hard to update all of our analyses in this period of exceptional economic turmoil. Many of the challenges we've faced and are still facing are not only common to our other capital projects, but to those of our other local authorities. And we should all be concerned that they are also still being faced by businesses in the private sector alike. I'll leave it there. Thank you, Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Merriweather. Now, in order to facilitate a proper discussion on this item, we are now going to move into exempt. But before I read out the notice, I'm going to ask the Executive Head of Legal and Democratic Services, Susan Sale, to say a few words in response to a suggestion that was made earlier on that it would not be proper.
Thank you, Deputy Leader, through you. I'm satisfied that the report does contain exempt information in accordance with paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, which provides that information that relates to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, can be deemed to be exempt. There is financial information within the report relating to the council's position, which I consider renders it exempt. The executive do also need to consider the public interest test when looking at exempt information and balance whether the public interest in a matter outweighs the need to keep the information exempt. And in this case, my advice would be that it doesn't, because it is commercially sensitive information.